another edition of Poets Have Something to Say. We do a monthly show here. This is the December show, and we are more than pleased to have Nick Chiarkas with us. Nick is, I first ran into Nick at the Lakefly Writers Conference, and he had a lot to say with regard to his development as a writer, with a lot of great motivational tips for other writers. Nick Chiarkas is a frequent Writers Conference presenter. He's also a Wisconsin Writers Association board member, author of 9 traditionally published books, 2 award-winning novels, Weepers and Nunzios Way, and 7 nonfiction books. He grew up in the Al Smith housing projects on Manhattan's Lower East Side. When he was in 4th grade, his mother was told by the principal of the public school that Nick was unlikely to ever complete high school, and you must steer him toward a simple and secure vocation. We'll get into that. A very interesting life. He's also a former New York police officer who was at Woodstock. So how could it be more interesting? Nick, thanks for joining us today.
Oh, thank you. This is fun. I really appreciate the fact that you're sharing your time with me, Jeffrey. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. And I love doing the show. I think it shows. Let's talk a little bit about, before we get into the details, I guess we usually do a poem that my guest would do a poem at the beginning and the end of the show. I stole that idea from Jeremy Jusick, my friend from Ohio, who's one of the wonderful poetry spokespeople out in Ohio. So what would you like to share a quick poem with us to start off with?
Sure, be happy to. May I give a little background to this poem? Or would
yes.
you rather me just...
No, let's hear some background first. That'd be great.
Okay, so when I was a police officer in New York City, there was a killing in the subway system, and in the subway system, there are basically 3 levels of tunnels that homeless people live in, and the theory or what books have said is that if you live on the bottom level, the 3rd level, you never really get to live on the street again. You're sort of lost down there, and you'll live there. People on the top level, their kids still go to school and just return to the subway tunnel. Anyway, there was a killing, and my partner Tom Kenny and I had 2 witnesses, 2 men in the back of our police car, what we called radio cars back in those days.
Mm-hmm.
And they were talking. And one of them said that to the other that he found the doorway on the 3rd level, on the bottom level. Now, the doorway, the theory is that what they believe is that there is a doorway to hell.
Boy.
And it is 30 yards below the 3rd hell. It's 30 yards below the 3rd level. Well, he found the doorway and started walking down what he said was a spiral staircase.
Mm-hmm.
His friends said, what did you see? And he said, I stopped because I heard 2 men talking. It sounded like they were talking over breakfast.
Mm.
And his friend asked, well, what did they say? And then they saw me looking in the rearview mirror, kind of listening to them. And they stopped talking. They whispered, but I couldn't hear them. Anyway, that incident stayed with me and triggered a short poem called 30 Below.
Wow, that's really chilling.
Most people that read the poem or hear the poem have no idea why I called it 30 Below.
Mm-hmm.
And what I tried to capture in the poem is what that conversation might have been between the 2 men.
Well, okay.
Okay. So 30 Below. So good to have breakfast again with you, my friend. Were you out there, Nathan, walking when the world was created? Did you see its swindler's stroke? Mountains rained upon the earth, skies flew over oceans, and the rule was pushed, as I pushed this salt to you, for the reverence of reason, that gentle, impervious splendor called man, and for his consumption plants forth fruit. I hold the report. His mountains are empty of secrets, his waters stagnant beneath green film, his fields are drab with dust, and his skies brown and diseased, and his reverence of reason feed on their cubs. Yes, God love you. I am overly hard. He is not without gifts, and though they fear it will arrive as it began with a repulsive thump, as children await Christmas, they await death. Were you there, Nate? Did you wear your woolen sweater? That's 30 below.
Wow. Wow. Would you say that writing something like that is that therapeutic to you, and how is that therapeutic, would you say?
It is therapeutic to me. It's therapeutic when I and this is so egotistical, I know, when I think God should be doing a better job.
Yeah.
I was raised as an altar boy. I was an altar boy as a kid. I was raised Catholic. I'm sort of I've fallen away from the church. I used to be an usher. I was very involved in the Catholic Church, and I've kind of become disgusted with what's going on in the world, and the sorrows, and the hunger, and I know we can't question God's reasoning. We don't know what God is thinking, but I want to believe in a loving God, a forgiving God, and not a punishing God. And so it's therapeutic for me to express the thoughts that I would never dare express to a priest or even to my parents or many other people. Yes, very therapeutic.
Yeah, I know you write a lot about. I'm holding up your first book right now, Weepers by Nick Chiarkas, and this is the one I picked up. I'm still trudging through it, maybe at page 45, but I'm finding it very captivating. Weepers is the first book, and then your second is Nunzios Way. I hope I pronounced that right. Nunzio.
You did. Yeah.
And Nunzio is that basically that's your grandfather? Is that right? Uncle. Okay.
My uncle.
I got that wrong. So what about what? So you write. Well, let's just take a step back here. You write Weepers, and tell us a little bit about Weepers. Is about a 1957 murder of an undercover cop in New York City, in the housing project. Just for those of our listeners that have not heard of or read Weepers, what motivated you to write it, and just a quick synopsis.
A quick synopsis would be that it is a fictionalized biography. What I wanted to do was lift the curtain of what it's like to grow up in stark poverty in an inner city, in a housing project. And I've read books about poverty in cities and in rural areas and farmland, and certainly Appalachia, and it exists every place. The housing projects in New York City during the 1950s especially was the had the highest crime rate in the country and some of the highest poverty in the country. The projects were not a melting pot. It was more like a fruit salad. You had Italians, black kids, Puerto Rican kids, Chinese kids, and instead of living in these neighborhoods, we all lived in this housing project. Gang rules the projects.
Mm-hmm.
The thing about poverty is not so much that you don't have enough money to buy things, food, whatever it might be. The thing about living in poverty is that you grow up feeling that you're not as good as the other kids, the kids that have things. It is a sense that in a city filled with generals, you will always be a private.
Mm-hmm.
Poverty is more about how you feel about yourself than it is about not having enough money. I wanted to raise the curtain on that. I wanted to raise the curtain a little bit about the Catholic religion. There's a couple of priests in the story, but I didn't want to raise it as a sociologist. You know, I wanted to, as many people have said, the best way to tell the truth is through fiction. So it is basically a fictionalized biography of my growing up in the project. When I first wrote it, by the way, the kid, that's the little kid in it, the 13-year-old, I named him Nick. And then he couldn't do anything wrong. It was terrible. It was an awful draft. And so I had to get rid of that and change the name to Angelo.
Okay.
And I put Nick, me, in the gang someplace. But it is gangs, organized crime, and it is showing that, you know, that one of the things that sparked Weepers was a comment that a couple of people made. One was that why don't these kids just listen to the cops when they tell them to do something? Not understanding that this is a whole different culture, and it's more important to stand up and not do what the cops say than to get in trouble. And the other thing, a politician in Wisconsin, I won't say his name, I was talking to him, we were chatting about a kid that got in trouble in school, and this politician said, you know, in my day, if I did something like that, when I came down to the breakfast room, my father would let me have it. And I said, you know, there's three things that you're missing in that little statement. First of all, you're coming downstairs. Some of these kids live in cars. You have a breakfast room. You have a room set aside for breakfast. You actually have breakfast. And you have a father that's present. Now take that all away and tell me what would happen if you acted like that in school. And so I wanted to raise that curtain. I'm kind of long-winded. I'm sorry.
No, that's fine.
But that's why.
So, and then, so Nunzio's Way, and I think I read that, did you say that you made Nunzio too nice in the first book, and that Nunzio is a little bit more hard-edged and real, the real organized crime guy in the second one?
I did. In real life, Nunzio's name is Mario, and I love him. Absolutely love him. He's very kind to me.
Yeah.
But he was a tough guy living in that neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
What you learn in the first book, and also in the second book, I guess, is that we kids, now that I told you we don't have much, there's no chance that we can afford going to a good school or a good college or a vacation. We didn't know what that was. Well, if we needed anything, if anybody in that neighborhood needed anything, they can go to Nunzio. And Nunzio could make it happen. So Nunzio was the person that made things even, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
If you believe that we're all equal,
yeah.
Nunzio made us equal.
Yeah.
Or at least feel that way. My belief, Jeffrey, is that if I were on a rooftop having a fight with a kid from a middle class or upper class home,
yeah.
and we both fell off the roof and died,
yeah.
I would win because they have more to lose.
Interesting. Yeah.
So that's the feeling of poverty, and we relied on Nunzio to help us make it even. It's not to say, and that's why I wrote Nunzio's Way, that Nunzio was this nice, easygoing, kind man.
Yeah, I was actually having a conversation with my son this morning, and he's home for the Thanksgiving weekend, and he was talking about a lyric in a song of a group that he likes, a millennial group, where one of the phrases is that my grandpa's in the mafia and he's the nicest guy I know, and that's kind of what you're saying, is that there's this, I guess this is how I process it, is there's some kind of abstract thinking that needs to be, that we can't just say, oh, this is black and white, good and bad, that there are nuances and wrinkles and things that we really want to get to know somebody. Let's get to know their past, their all the nuances of their life.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. It's what matters. After living as long as I have, surprisingly, what matters is not what you get for what you do, but what you become by doing it. And that's what I want folks to see. And that's something, we were all in a cement playground talking about what we want to be when we grow up, we kids. And I wanted to be a longshoreman because they had good overtime, working on the ships, ships, or a cop or something like that. And Nunzio, Uncle Mario, walked by, and he said to us, "Don't think about what job you want. Think about the kind of man you want to be when you grow up. Because if you're that, nobody could take it away from you, no matter what. If you want to be a stand-up guy, you'll be a stand-up guy.
Yep.
You get a job, you could lose it." And there was a kind of wisdom in the neighborhood, talking to people sitting on benches, the old people. And it was a different generation, I guess, and what was important and what wasn't important. And a lot of it was making sense of how we were living, but a lot of it stayed with me through the years.
If you just joined us, Nick Chiarkas is our guest. He's the author of Weepers and Nunzios Way, and also he's written poems. We're going to check out one of his poems here before the show closes out. Believe it or not, we're 5 or 10 minutes from the conclusion of the show. Before I forget, Nick, how do people get your books? How do they order your books?
Oh, I'd love bookshops if they're carrying them, but certainly Amazon. They're traditionally published, so that they're every place.
Let's take a step back, and I want to ask you about your. There's so many questions, but I want to ask you when you first realized you were a writer. I think I read something that you were very self-conscious for a while, and believe me, I've gone through all of this too, imposter syndrome and so on and so forth. But there was you struggled, right? Whether you were thinking, am I really a good writer or not? Did you struggle with that quite a bit?
Oh yeah, I still do. I still do. There's that demon that sits on my shoulder.
Yeah.
And even reading a poem right now to you, saying, oh, "What are you doing? You're not good enough to do this. You can't."
No, I thought it was good.
The principle was right. What are you trying to prove? You can't do this. Do something else. Do nothing. Do nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's the bad guy on your shoulder is saying, I don't know. Yeah, I've struggled that with my guitar playing. I call myself a struggling beginner, but I love sharing I'm a confident beginner. I love sharing my guitar music on my YouTube channel too, but it's I think it's
I've watched you. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess it's at least enough so you don't turn it off, right?
I don't turn it off.
Good. But I think, and I talked to my son about that last night. We had a great talk about how creative outlets are really important, whether it's, painting or writing or what have you, and even fitness can be a great outlet for stress. And and I think I do write. I write a lot of. My wife is right about this. I think I write and I play guitar to deal with stress sometimes, and I can go into my guitar room and I can just kind of be, and I can work on a James Taylor song and just go into a different kind of I don't know. It's kind of a dip. You can create a different atmosphere for yourself, I think, by writing or your creative activity. So I was encouraging my son to maybe throughout his life, he's 29, and throughout his life, maybe look for those opportunities to just to do something for the sake of doing it, I think is important.
Oh, I completely agree with that. And poetry has been that for me. I mean, I could be sitting on the couch, and of course, I'm thinking about what I'm going to write, and my wife will look at me and say, "Where are you right now?" Because my head is just someplace else.
Yeah.
But when I'm stuck reading when I was in the Army, a lot of people don't know this. I was in an Army hospital. I got a lovely letter from J.D. Salinger.
Wow.
Who I loved. I wrote him a fan letter, and he wrote back to me. I have a frame, actually, on my wall. And one of the things he said was, I'm at best a one-shot letter writer. So I knew we weren't going to become pen pals. But I wrote to him a second time and said how much I would like to be a writer, how much I would like to be able to write what you write. I had just read his short story called A Girl I Knew. And I'll go back to that. And so if you could give me any advice, just a word of advice, I'd really appreciate it. And he wrote back, and I have that letter too. And he took me literally, and it was one word, and it was haiku. And I didn't know what that was. I looked it up, and I love haiku. I love writing haiku. I love the fact that he loved it. I was reading what triggered my my writing to him is I was reading a short story by him. It was originally called Ween Ween, and it was published in Good Housekeeping, I think in 1948 or 49.
Mm-hmm.
And they changed the title, and he never published with Good Housekeeping again because they changed the title.
Wow.
But in the middle of a paragraph, it's a short story, 7 pages maybe, on page 6, in the middle of a narrative, and I'm not going to get this exactly right, I know. There's a line where he says she was doing nothing. She wasn't doing a thing that I could see except standing there, leaning on the balcony railing, holding the universe together.
Wow.
And that touched me in such a profound way that a writer writing fiction, a short story, could move somebody so far away that made me want to write. You write something and you touch somebody, and it's somebody that you don't know, and it could be somebody 100 years from now. And it's the magic of poetry. It's the magic of the words, like the scent of the flower, not the flower, the scent of it that travels to someone else.
Yeah.
And it's there for everyone. Anyway, I'm sorry.
That's beautiful. That's just absolutely beautiful that writing has sort of an immortality. And I think I guess maybe that's a reason that I write is to have that somewhat of an immortality where my great-grandchildren and my great-great-grandchildren might be able to say, oh, your great-grandfather was a writer and he wrote these songs, and something to leave behind.
Yeah.
It's important.
I mean, I think cavemen did that just to say, I was here. I was here. Look at this.
Yeah.
I agree.
Our existences, we're here for, if we're lucky, 80, 90 years, if we're lucky. And we're just, our existences are a snapshot in the whole span of time. And it seems like, what is this worth anyway? But I think it's this drive toward creativity that's what I've resonated to into my early 60s, is this drive toward creativity has to mean something. And to share this drive toward creativity, hey, look what I'm doing. It's not, I know my dad once said, you just want attention. That's why you're doing this. Well, it's much more, I think it's much more rich and nuanced than that, and that to create is to do something magical, to use your phrase there, to use your word.
I agree. I think it is magic. I mean, that anybody could walk, I'm going to repeat myself, past the rose and lean down and smell it.
Yeah.
And the smell is beautiful.
Yep.
And everybody shares that. And it's free. Here it is. This rose was here. I think that's what writing music is.
Yeah. I know I've mentioned
magic.
I've mentioned this on other shows, but I once heard Neil Young once said, well, he doesn't, when he writes a great song, and he's written many great songs, when he writes a great song, he's not quite sure where it comes from, but it really doesn't come from him. It comes from something greater and timeless, and he's tapping into this universal. When he writes a song like Heart of Gold, I mean, you can't just sit down and write that in 5 minutes.
No.
But sometimes his songs happen to him that fast. And so anyway, I think that there is something that sometimes with life, I think the things we don't know about that are wonderful and the numinous, that's the meaning of life for me, is the numinous.
I agree with that. I mean, when you have an emotion and then you can express that emotion, and you can find the words to put down so that somebody else could feel that same emotion. I mean, there's a magic about that. It's not just attention. There's a shared magic in doing that.
All right.
Okay.
Well, Nick Chiarkas, I'm holding up your first book again, Weepers, and I'm on page 46, but I'm hoping to continue very soon. You know, I'm one of those people, I don't know if you're the same way, but I have like 15 books started, and I can never finish one.
Yeah, I do that. Yeah.
What? Well, thank you. It's been my pleasure having you on as a guest. Let's do it again. Do you have any new books planned at all after Nunzio?
I'm working on the third one, which is Black Tiger Tea.
Wow.
And so that I figure I'm about 9 months to a year away from that.
What's the significance of the title, Black Tiger?
There's a myth that comes from Cambodia that if you grind the bones of a black tiger and make it into tea and drink it, you will become immortal.
Wow.
There really are no real black tigers. It's like a dragon.
Yeah.
But Black Tiger Tea, I thought would be an important title for the third book.
It sounds fascinating. Nick, we'll definitely have you back on the show. Thank you very much for taking part of your Sunday with us. And we're recording this on Sunday morning. It will be played back sometime today. So thanks again for all you do for writing, and your talks at Lake Fly were inspirational to me, and I'm really glad I had you on the show.
Thank you, Jeffrey. I'm glad to have been here. It's fun talking with you, my friend.
All right. We'll see you down the road. Thank you so much.
Right.
You have a great day, Nick.
Keep playing.
Yeah, thank you. You too. Keep writing. Take care. All right. Well, that was Nick Chiarkas again. His book is Weepers, the first book, and then Nunzios Way and Black Tiger Tea is coming up. So thank you again for joining us on the program. We do the podcast every month, and that is usually around the first of the month. We have a brand new podcast. Feel free to subscribe to my channel, and that's another edition of Poets Have Something to Say. Have a great rest of your week.